July's. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for July's Talking About. Tonight we have Peter Andrews with us, who's the ministry lead for the Boys Brigade. And obviously he's going to be talking a little bit about the Boys Brigade and how Boys Brigade can support children, young people in your church, but obviously wider than that with uniformed organisations, and how we can best make use of the links there and continue to build and strengthen those partnerships that we may already have. So if you haven't come to a Talking About before, it's a fairly relaxed hour that we'll have together. So I'll hand over to Peter just in a moment, and he'll kind of talk about what he wants to talk about. And then we will have afterwards a little bit of a discussion and a kind of Q&A. So if you have questions that pop up while Peter's talking, please just feel free to add them into the chat, or if you want to save them and just ask yourself once we come to that section. And then we will finish with a prayer and a few adverts of other things that are coming up. But that is generally how our time will go, and it will definitely be done by 8 o'clock as well. But without further ado, I will hand over to Peter to lead us in tonight's session. So thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Stephen. I'm going to try and share my screen. So this is almost the scariest bit of the whole, given I should know by now how to do this. Let's have a go. Can you see a slide?
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for that welcome. It's great to be with you. Obviously, I don't know what circumstances you've come from and what circumstances are like in your church, whether you know lots about uniformed organisations or you're here tonight to find out a bit more because you would find that interesting and thinking about how it might help your church. As Stephen said, obviously, I work for the Boys Brigade, and therefore that's the hat I wear, and that's what I'm thinking about day in and day out. So whilst I will try to cover some elements of uniformed organisations, that will cover maybe different organisations from the Boys Brigade, just bear with me that the Boys Brigade is what I live and breathe, and so therefore I'm coming from that aspect. But I think there's some things that I'll say which are common denominators to most uniformed organisations, and then as we narrow down maybe to Girls Brigade and Boys Brigade, maybe there's some differences there, but hopefully you'll find something to take away. That's what I usually say when I'm running webinars like this. If people take one thing away that they didn't know at the start or they think is interesting, then that's a win for me. So let's just dig in. I've got a bit of interaction, if that's possible. I wanted to start thinking about strengths and misconceptions about uniformed organisations, and let's start with the strengths. You could either type this into the chat, which I can't see at the moment, but maybe someone could read them out if you do, or just if you're confident to shout them out. What might be some strengths that people think when they think about a uniformed organisation for young people? What are the strengths that maybe come to mind?
National resources.
Yeah. I'm not going to try and type these up. I've got a list. Let's just throw them up and then I'll show you my list. Hopefully your list will be much better than mine. So
in the chat, we've got history and support network.
Yeah. Anything else related to strengths?
Yeah, we've got achievements and training.
Yeah. Maybe one more. Anyone's got one? Okay, let me show you my list. Let's say it's not necessarily definitive, but touches upon some of the things I think people have mentioned. So when people think about uniformed organisations, maybe they think they're trusted. Maybe they think about belonging, community, adventure, leadership, character development, positive role models, long-term relationships, value-based, and service. And then there's often quite a few misconceptions about uniformed organisations. So what do you think some of the misconceptions might be about uniformed organisations?
They're a bit regimented and military,
Yep,
old-fashioned.
yep.
Mel's put only for Christians.
Okay, yeah. So the list I've got is relatively long. It's as long as the strength. I don't know if that's intentional, but so some people think it's old-fashioned, too strict. We kind of mentioned that. Militaristic, exclusive, boring, only for certain young people. Um, Faith development is tokenistic. Obviously, that's a Christian uniformed organisation. Maybe there's lack of flexibility, that there's too much commitment involved. Don't know whether that's for the leaders or for the young people, but probably for both. And it's not relevant today. So we live in this sort of tension, certainly within the Boys Brigade of, we have strengths that people recognise, and then there are definitely some misconceptions about what we do and who we are, and often those are based on um, really sort of history. Sometimes, maybe they knew how the Boys Brigade was 50 years ago or 40 years ago or more recently, but some of those are maybe distant memories of how as a uniformed organisations have moved forward. But given that we do wear a uniform and that sort of does stand out, I guess that's par for the course. And I think possibly sometimes the misconceptions sort of outweigh people's understandings of the strength. So hopefully this evening will at least balance that a little bit. But we do recognise that uniformed organisations do have difficulties for some people, and that could be for a whole host of reasons. So yeah, we'll probably dig into those. Everyone loves a quiz. Well, that's not true, but let's pretend everyone does love a quiz. And there's just a few questions that I've got here, and I haven't got a prize, and I have no way of sending the prize. But the glory of getting any question right in this quiz you can carry with you for the rest of your life. And the quiz has a point. I like a quiz with a point, and the point is I'm going to unpack some of the things that relates to the answers to these questions as we go through the rest of this presentation. Now, some people may have a big advantage in relation to this, so I'm looking at Will and thinking he may have an advantage in some of these questions. But let's go for it. Does anyone know how old the BB is? How long, as a uniformed organisation, we have been going for? Anyone wants to hazard a guess?
In the chat, we've got 35. I was going to say over 100, so maybe 125.
Okay. Any increase or decrease on 125? Okay, so the Boys Brigade was founded in 1883, October. So I think that takes us to be, my maths isn't very good, 142, and 143 in October of this year. So we've been going for a very long time, and like any long-standing organisation, that brings with it some advantages and some challenges as well. But we've been around. Again, my math's not very good, but I think we're into our third century now. So we've been around for quite a bit. And I'm going to unpack why that maybe matters in a little bit. Does anyone know what is the age range of children and young people that the BB works with? Any guesses?
5 to 18. And somebody, a few in the chat saying
Yeah.
that.
Very good. Yes, if you got 5 to 18, I will award you 1 point. And technically, we can also take some children at 4, but generally, our our age range is 5 to 18. Now, not every group, every company will have that age range. It really depends what serves them and what works. Some might just do under 11s work. Some may have we have 4 sections, so some may have 3 sections. It completely varies according to the church, but there is that sense of working from the age of 5 up to 18. And again, I'm going to unpack that and why that's important in a minute. This may come as a surprise to you. If there's a complete surprise to you, then you've learned something different tonight. When did the Boys Brigade first start welcoming girls? How long in our 142-year history have we welcomed girls?
(2000).
Okay, that's a good, nice round guess.
In the chat, we've got 1992.
Okay.
And then also 142 years ago.
Okay, well, yeah. It wasn't 142 years ago. It was actually 18 years ago. So 2008. So we're coming up for 20 years now. So basically, not very long would be the answer. Another answer in relation to that, which may or may not be surprising given the name, but the name is another issue for us. We won't go into that tonight, but we have been welcoming girls since 2008 as part of our Girls Association. One day we may move to a point where we don't have such a complicated name for describing how the girls fit into the organisation, but we do have girls in the organisation. Probably only, say, 20% of our companies have girls at the moment, and mostly our older companies tend to be sticking to the boys. But if we open a new company or group at the moment, we would always recommend, unless there's provision for girls in the church, that they start girls and boys together, because the girls love it, and the boys are often the engagement of the boys is often better, not necessarily for reasons you might be thinking, but with the girls there, because they bring much more energy in certain areas. How many companies, groups, do you think the Boys Brigade has in England, Wales, Scotland, and the Republic of Ireland? And just to say, if you're wondering why Northern Ireland isn't there, Northern Ireland is a separate organisation. They do run the Boys Brigade, but they're not part of England, Wales, Scotland, and Republic of Ireland, and that's a fairly relatively new development. So how many groups have we got in those areas? Any ideas?
In the chat, we've got 355 and 300. I'll say 150.
Okay. So, I mean, it kind of varies from almost day to day, but we are getting towards 700 groups in those areas. Probably about 675 to be more precise at the moment. So quite significant. Now, it's not as significant as it was back in the day, whenever back in the day was. But over the past few years, numbers have stabilised, and in certain areas started to grow as well. It's coming down from quite a big number. Back in the 50 years beyond, there was much more uniformed organisations going on in churches, I think. And the final question, without putting anyone on the spot, how many URC churches did the BB partner with? So how many of our groups, companies do you think are in URC churches?
So we've got 45 in the chat.
Yep.
50.
Okay.
450.
Okay.
85.
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to give the prize, not that there's a prize, to the person who said 45. There's the number is 34. So there's 34 BB companies active in URC churches, and previously there might have been more than that. But that's the number that we have on our list at the moment. So probably reasonably small given the size of the church. But yeah, very much enjoying partnering with those churches. And as I say, I just want to unpack why these things are maybe important when we think about uniformed organisations in the round. So let's look at the first thing, and this really comes from the idea that many uniformed organisations have been established for a very long time. Now we know that may have some problems in it, but let's think about the positives of why that might be important. And what we think about that is longevity creates a deep depth of experience that enables uniform organisations to remain relevant, trusted, and effective in supporting children and young people in an ever-changing world. We live, don't we, in a society where we're looking for the next big thing. We're looking for something cutting edge, something new, a new app, a new program, a new phone, a new whatever. The drive is always to find something new that, particularly when we're in ministry, is going to bring that breakthrough. Is going to bring the desires of our heart. What God's got planned for the nation to fruition, and we're looking, and quite rightly too, looking for what those things might be. But in doing that, we just maybe sometimes overlook the more slightly traditional, in inverted commas, ways of working that have been around for a long time, and maybe sometimes, occasionally, we can be a bit dismissive of that because, well, oh gosh, that's a bit old hat. That's been going for years. Let's find something else. Let's have something else to do, and a different way of approaching things. And as I say, that's not against anything new and innovative, but it's just to say that when people connect with a uniformed organisation, in most cases that has been established for a long time, and there's lots of learnings that come from that. Learnings in terms of practice, learnings in terms of delivery, in terms of how to do children's and youth work. We wouldn't still be here if there wasn't value in what we're doing, and churches were recognising that, and we wouldn't still be opening new groups and companies if people weren't recognising what we do had value. So, and I think in the wider context, when people are looking at people's experience and people's thinking about, do these guys or do these people that I'm signing up to have experience in how to do children's and youth work. Most youth uniformed organisations do have that because they've learnt that over many years, and in certain cases it's been very painful to learn that, and they've had to adapt their practices and policies to allow them to be relevant and safe in the modern age. But they're still here, and we can, I think, just have confidence in the fact that that those experiences built up over years can give us confidence that they have something to offer. So I suppose the headline is, don't be dismissive because something's been around for a long time, because our denominations have often been around for a long time as well. So we need to recognise there's value in something that is established and has been around for a while, and the experience that brings, recognising that sometimes is a challenge as well. So longevity creates a depth of experience that enables uniformed organisations to remain relevant, trusted, and effective in supporting children and young people in an ever-changing world. The next one is the value of sustained engagement. And again, with most uniformed organisations, one of the strengths lies in the long-term relationships that they build with children and young people throughout their formative years. So we've talked about, for the BB's example, the age range we work with. We work from 4 or 5 to the age of 18. Now that is the most of the time that a young person is part of their formative years. So if we're running a company or a group where children can join at the age of 5, the potential is we will still be in contact with them at the age of 18. Now that is a massive opportunity. It's a massive privilege. It's a massive challenge. But it's just, again, in a culture where things move so fast, where, even within, within the time scale we're talking about, children may have moved schools two or three times, so they've had that transition. Within a uniformed organization, potentially they could be around some of the same leaders, definitely around the same church for that period of time. And what a privilege that is to be able to invest in young lives for that length of time, and how unusual it is in terms of everything else that's going on in society, and the sort of superficial nature of some of the things that young people can engage in. So when we're thinking about what the value of uniformed organisation is, there's massive value in the fact that we can develop long-term relationships with children and young people, and the opportunity that gives to us to disciple them, to invest in their lives, and to just see them flourish and be part of our church family as well. So, yeah, long-term relationships is definitely something I would highlight as being a key factor of uniformed organisations. And the third thing is the value of embracing change. So we talked about, when we made the decision to invite girls to be part of the organisation. Now, you probably don't need much imagination to think that was quite challenging for some people within the organisation, who thought that's what shouldn't happen, because we're all about boys, and we shouldn't be moving forward, and we shouldn't be developing, and we shouldn't be becoming more diverse. Hopefully, most of those arguments have faded into the background in many cases, but I'm sure they're bubbling away at some point. But most uniform organisations, have got anything about themselves, will recognise that they do need to change over time. So the Boys Brigade is not the same today as it was in 1883. Thank goodness. We don't have, for example, yes, we have a uniform, but it's very casual now in many senses. So mostly just a polo shirt and a sweatshirt. We definitely don't have dummy rifles, which was one of the things that they had back in 1883. Yes, occasionally, we do have parades and things like that, and some companies lean into that a bit more, but they tend to be quite traditional companies. But generally, our focus is on moving forward, is thinking about change, how we can move the organisation forward, so we're not just stuck in the past. So when we say meaningful change enables us to grow, remain relevant, and better serve the needs of today's children, young people, and communities. So we're not about change for change's sake, but we are committed, and most uniformed organisations are committed to move forward in loads of different areas, in terms of their programme, in terms of diversity, in terms of making sure that they remain relevant to churches and to children and young people. But having said that, it is quite hard, as I sort of mentioned a little bit earlier. There's only certain speeds you can go in relation to things, particularly with a long-standing organisation. Potentially we'd love to do something with a name, but you've got to fight your battles, and you've got to concentrate on the things that are going to use your energy, and maybe move you forward in terms of delivery to children and young people. But most uniform organisations, as I say, if they've got anything about themselves, will be changing, will be looking forward and not back. We honour the past, but we definitely want to look forward to where we're going into the future. So change is in vital importance to uniformed organisations. And then just final two to talk about. The value of reach. In an increasingly fragmented society, uniformed organisations offer something increasingly rare: a network that connects hundreds of churches across denominational boundaries in a shared commitment to serving children, young people, and their communities. So we've talked about, and I'll sort of touch upon this again in a moment, a number of URC churches we partner with, but we partner with extensively with the Methodist Church, with the Baptist Church, with the Church of Scotland, with the Church of England, with free churches, with evangelical churches. And that is, and literally someone said to me just the other day about what it must, said to me, like, I said, oh, this is it's getting quite difficult in the denomination world. Denominations are sort of different, going different tracks and stuff like that. And potentially puts us in, as a uniformed organisation, a difficult position to know how we frame that and how we navigate that. And they said to me, well, I think it's a fantastic privilege for you as an organisation to be serving all these diverse range of churches without necessarily sort of putting your boots in one camp and said, yes, this is the thing we're affiliating to. We're affiliating to the church, and then we're seeing the diversity that works out from that. So I think that's really powerful to us, and I hope it comes across as something that uniformed organisations are very good at, that they connect across different denominations, and in times of things when things are fragmenting, the opportunity to, in one sense, bring people together in a sort of common cause or a common organisation is quite rare, and so it's something we value, and we hope that the churches we partner with value as well, because we all have something to learn from each other, and the fact that we're dealing with different denominations gives us a real opportunity to think sort of a helicopter view of what resources would work, what would work for in this context, and what will work in that context. We're in the position to do that, and many uniformed organisations are as well. So I think that gives us the value of the 650, 675 churches we're connecting with does bring value to our individual groups, even though it's sort of maybe a bit diffused by the time it gets down there. I think, being part of something bigger than that is a great benefit for anyone connecting to a uniformed organisation. And then the final point, again, comes out of the sort of quiz that we were talking about when we were talking about the number of URC churches we partner with. So the partnership between the Boys Brigade and the United Reformed Church is founded, we believe, on shared vision, helping children and young people discover faith, develop character, and find belonging within their local communities. So, we very much believe that our role is to partner with churches. We don't have another route for delivering what we do in the Boys Brigade. There's occasionally talk and saying, well, churches are in inverted commas failing, and churches are closing, and how does that affect the future of uniformed organisations? Maybe we should be thinking about doing our own thing and starting Boys Brigade groups that aren't attached to churches. And our line on that is not who we are. We are about partnering with churches. That's what the organisation was set up to do, and that's what we partner in ministry with churches. There is no other route for us to do that, because we believe passionately in that. So we want to serve the ministry of the local church, the ministry of denominations, come alongside them and partner in their strategy around children's and young people's work. So hopefully that's helpful in terms of the wider context of thinking about uniformed organisations, and many uniformed organisations would fit into those sort of categories and those key points that I just talked about. But maybe just to focus in a little bit more about what we do and how we approach it. And obviously this is sort of from the Boys Brigade point of view, but again, other organisations may have very similar things to this. And I suppose it's, from our point of view, we need to think about ourselves, what's our USP, what's our core value really in what we do. And I think, there are other uniformed organisations that are very strong on adventure, very strong on badges, very, very strong on leadership development and all those wonderful things. And, we have all those things within the offering that we have to churches. But at the heart of what we do is the Christian faith. It runs like a golden thread through everything that we do, and in a sense is a unique USP for us. Yes, we have all the other bits that we've talked about, but at the heart of what we're trying to do is reach young people with the Christian faith. So the good news of Jesus is what we're about at the heart of what we do. And we have this sort of faith journey that sort of tries to describe what the experience of a young person might be as they go through the organisation. It's not an exact model. It's not a sausage machine. It's just a way of just through our point of view internally, thinking about how we're doing, how we support our leaders, how we support our groups, in terms of thinking about the faith journey of young people within the church and within the BB groups. And it's very, very helpful. It begins with 4 E's, because it helps me remember it. And it's engage, explore, encounter, and expand. We talk about connecting with children and young people. That's the engage part. So any of our groups, that's exactly what they're doing week in, week out. They're engaging with children and young people in the community, bringing them into the context of the church fellowship. When the young people join our group, we say that they get the opportunity to explore the Christian faith. Now, that might be through our program, it might be through devotions, it might be through connecting with the church in church services, family services, and other aspects of being part of the church family. But a real opportunity for them to hear the stories about Jesus and to sort of begin to contextualize themselves with those. The next stage is encounter, and that's really that sense of I've heard all this stuff, and is it moving from my head to my heart, and how we help young people sort of process it for themselves, so their faith becomes owned by themselves. And then the expand is really just that sense of young people who've made a commitment. They say, yeah, I'm a follower of Jesus. They go out and make a difference in the world. So, as I say, it's not a perfect model by any means. It's purely just helps us to describe to people who might not understand the faith credentials of what the BB is and what we're trying to do, understand that aspect of it. But also it helps us think about, as I say, how young people are doing within the organisation and how we resource them to move forward on their faith journey. And then in terms of just moving through some elements in that faith journey and how we do this, and I guess this is true for other uniformed organisations as well. As I said, the church partnership is really important to us. We're investing at the moment quite a bit into our existing partnerships with churches, because we do believe they are essential to not only the faith journey, but to have a healthy relationship with the church is really important for our groups. And it would not be unfair to say, in many cases where Boys Brigade have been established in churches for a long time, there can be a bit of drift in terms of strategy and stuff like that. I don't know if anyone here has a Boys Brigade or other uniformed organisations in their church already, but keeping focused on what's the purpose of why we set this group up. Now, that's a challenging question, because in some of our cases that the people who set the Boys Brigade up are long since gone, because it could have been 50 years ago, it could have been 100 years ago. And so at some stage people decided, yeah, it'd be great to set up a Boys Brigade, a uniformed organisation in our church. And in the 50, 100 years since then, no one has reviewed it. No one's looked at it closely. No one's asked the question, how is this feeding into our strategy? How is it helping? What are we celebrating in terms of this relationship? And in some cases, that partnership has drifted apart, and it's not necessarily anyone's fault. It's just because no one's come back to say, what are we doing here? How's the uniformed organisation helping the ministry of the church? So at the moment, with our existing groups, we are very much leaning into encouraging them, along with our church, to celebrate church partnerships at least once a year, having a service where they come together to just talk about and give thanks for what's happened over the last 12 months. And just to say, well, we've been, this group has been part of the church for 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Just think about, all the young people who've gone through those companies, and just celebrate that before God. But really invest in that relationship. We really think that relationship is important, and it's not just having a group that is a nice thing to have. It's because it's part of the ministry of the local church. It needs to be thought about in terms of the strategy. And I think that's true for any uniformed organisation. Any work with children and young people, as you guys many of you will know, it's really important to understand what your motivation is for doing it, and measuring how successful you are in being able to deliver that. So yeah, we encourage our groups to celebrate their church partnership, and why the church partnership is very key to us. Just to say, in terms of the resources we provide those across 4 different sections, from anchors to seniors. We kind of talked about the fact that we work across these range of age groups, and that's really important to us. But it's also important that we provide resources that are suitable for those different age groups. So there's progression from one section to the other as well. And again, many uniformed organisations will have this sort of structure of, this is how we get badges, this is how we deliver the programme, and have great resources to do that. Every term we provide a programme planner for all our groups across all those 3 age ranges, which have different new activities in. So all the time we're trying to create relevant new activities, so that leaders don't have to spend loads of time preparing things, but also we can keep the programme relevant and fresh, and we're not sort of just delivering the same games and activities that we delivered 10, 20, 40 years ago. We want to keep things moving, keep things relevant, keep things attractive to young people, because at the end of the day, for most young people, their primary motivation for coming to the group will not be initially to find out more about Jesus. It will be to meet their friends and to have fun. And so the programme is key to developing that and keeping young people engaged. And most uniformed organisations will have that at their core. So we provide every term new programme resources for people across 6 areas: get active, get adventurous, get creative, get into the Bible, get involved, get learning, and we try to get a balance as well. Most uniformed organisations should be very welcoming to children and young people, whatever their backgrounds, whatever their interests. So we're not, in most cases, focusing on one thing. So we're not like having a BB company that completely focuses on football or completely focuses on crafts or whatever it is. We want to give them a balanced program, because we think that's the most attractive to young people. And then, just an example of how if you wanted to build a marshmallow shooter, we give you step-by-step instructions on how to do that. So we break it down to make it as easy as possible for our leaders, because all our leaders are volunteers, and volunteers are, as again I'm sure you know, very hard to come by, and we need to honour their time and make it as easy as possible to volunteer in a uniformed organisation. And then we have, I won't major on these, but just to say we have theme programs. So that's sort of a whole evening that the groups can work their way through. That still covers some of our activity areas, but actually is based upon a particular theme. So like the World Cup, which is just one that's just finished. And all these accessible via our website. So any leader as part of a group will be able to access our website and download all these resources. And then we have devotional resources that sort of do focus in more onto the faith element of what we do, just to give young people opportunity to explore and encounter Jesus within their groups. We've also just created a new sort of aspect of our ministry, which is called Spaces. And this is a sort of discipleship group for young people who are interested in sort of digging into faith at a deeper level. In one sense, it kind of is uniformed, but kind of isn't. And these guys have got Spaces hoodies on, but we don't insist that they wear those. But it's just an opportunity for young people 11 plus to have a separate group where they can come together just to discuss life's big issues. Because certainly within our programme in the Boys Brigade, as a uniformed organisation, on a Wednesday night or Friday night, whenever the group meets, they will do 14, 15 different activities in a quite high speed. And there will be some Christian element of that, or some faith element. but it doesn't particularly give young people the opportunity to think about that at a deeper level or to ask questions and stuff like that. It's very front foot driven, moving it forward, which is absolutely right to keep people engaged. But we felt from the Boys Brigade point of view and also from a church perspective, it's really good to invest in the discipleship journey of the young people. So that's why we created Spaces, which really helps young people move from the explore to the encounter stage of their faith journey. And then also, we've just recently started to organise some mission trips. We've just done one to Mexico for some of our young people to go and build a house for people living in poverty. And again, as an organisation like ourselves, that organising mission trips, offering them to groups is relatively not completely, but relatively easy for us as a large organisation just to bring people together. And so we can form a group because we can go to one church and they've got like 2 young people who want to go and another's got 5, and we can join them together and make it a viable mass to try to create a trip or some other project like that as well. And then my final sort of point again, I think, and this probably touches upon other uniformed organisations as well. If people are thinking about, this seems quite interesting and this is something we'd like to explore, sometimes it can seem a bit overwhelming. We say, well, there's 4 sections and you're running from 5 to 18, and there's all this training and there's all this program material, and it's just like, I don't know where to start. We'd always say to people, you don't need to start all the sections at once. You can start small, and we would tend to say to churches, well, start with your 5 to 8 year olds or your 8 to 11 year olds and build from there, because that's much more practical, and it's also gives you the opportunity to find your way and things like that. So you can start from our point of view, and I'm sure this may be true from other uniformed organisations. You could potentially start a group with the minimum of 3 trained adults, and so obviously it's better if you've got more than that, but depending upon the numbers that you're hoping to attract, it's relatively easy, and that relatively is underlined in that statement, but relatively easy to start a group if you start small and then think about where could we be in 5 years, what might this look like if we grew it from 5-year-olds to 10-year-olds to 15-year-olds, where would that take us in terms of our ministry to children and young people over the next 10 to 15 years. So I have got questions here, but I think probably we'll just have a discussion here. But if these questions are helpful, but we'd include those in the questions. So the questions I had was, what are the greatest opportunities and challenges for your church in reaching children and young people and families today? How could a uniformed organisation like the Boys Brigade help your church respond to those opportunities and challenges? And what barriers do you think there would be in establishing a uniformed organisation like the Boys Brigade in your church? I mean, we don't, as I say, don't need to necessarily answer all those questions. So I'm very happy to sort of take any questions that people have, or observations, or challenges that you've got that we may be able to speak into in the remaining of our time together. So I will stop sharing my screen. Any thoughts or any questions or any observations or anything really?
I've got a question, Peter, if I may. It strikes me that Boys Brigade and Scouts and Guides and all those, they tend to be in churches because churches have always done them. And so Scouts or Boys Brigade members grow up, become leaders, and continue. What about a church that has never had a uniformed officer? I'm asking you because you're Boys Brigade. A church that has never had Boys Brigade or any history of Boys Brigade before, but think, having seen this video on YouTube, think actually that might be something we could do. How genuinely easy is it to start from scratch?
I think it is easy because what we do is we walk people very carefully through the process. We we want to make sure that if someone's interested in starting a BB group, that they understand what it entails right at the start, so there's no surprises along the way. So if someone was to say, "Oh yeah, I'm interested in this," then our first stage will be to say, "Well, let's get together, usually on Zoom, but let's get together, have a discussion about what you're hoping to achieve and how you think the Boys Brigade or another uniformed organisation in this sense might help you achieve that, and really understand what's the elements of that. You know, what's your volunteers like? Where will you get volunteers from? So before we move forward, it's really just a sense of let's find each other, let's understand, is this a good fit for the church at this time? You know, we have said, and we'll say to churches, we just, you know, we don't think this is for you. You know, we don't believe, you know, uniformed organisations, Boys Brigade, Girls Brigade, X organisations are for everybody. Absolutely, completely agree with that. But you know, where someone's interested, we really want to explore with them: is this the right fit for you? And if it is, we will walk with them to set it up and hold their hand metaphorically as they do that. I think the challenge is probably with the uniformed organisation like the BB is that there's a bit of mystique around it, and there's like terminology that we use that people find weird, basically. So, like, you know, we try to now to talk externally, talk about our groups as groups, but internally, you know, many of our groups wouldn't recognise that. They say, well, we're companies. That's the traditional method, and then companies are formed into battalions, and battalions are districts, and so I think when churches first start, we try to help them not be too scared by that and say to them, to be honest, you don't have to call yourself a company if you don't want to. To be honest, you don't have to be attached to a battalion if you don't want to. There are probably certain lines that we would say, yeah, we're a uniformed organisation, so it probably is a good idea that you get some uniform for the group. But there's definitely flexibility in there. So I think the process is easy, but there are some challenges in it in terms of just hand holding and people being familiar with the terminology and stuff like that we use. But we very much do focus on new groups. We put a lot of energy and effort into supporting them when they start, because particularly if they've got no BB experience, which in many cases is really helpful sometimes. I think we do get some of our groups are started by BB members who've just landed in a church and they say, "Oh, I was in the BB. I'd love to start the BB in the church," and they really carry the church with them on their on the back of their enthusiasm. And enthusiasm is a great thing, but it doesn't always, tick all the boxes that you need. So we're often a bit cautious when people do that, because we sometimes think, well, actually, what's the purpose of this? Are they just trying to recreate the experience they had, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But so when a church comes to us fresh, we think that's a really exciting thing, and we want to just navigate them and help them navigate some of the quirks of an organization that's been around for 142 years. So I don't know if that answers the question, Leo, but
yeah, it does. Thank you. Yes.
Yep, Peter, I've got a question. So I know a number of churches who sponsor a uniformed organisation in their church. So for example, at the Scouts group will run in their church building, but actually the church members and the church elders don't really have a lot to do with the organisation. So I guess how could a church begin to maybe strengthen that relationship that they might have if they thought from tonight, I want to strengthen that relationship with the uniformed organisation? What are maybe some of the things that they could do to kind of begin that conversation?
I suppose it starts with just thinking about how you define the relationship. So I completely understand what you mean when you say the word sponsor. I from our perspective, we would not use that word we would, well, other people might use it, but that's not how we see the relationship with the church. So it's being very clear in uh, understanding what you think the relationship is now, what defining what you think it is, and what I suppose then sort of casting forward, what would you like it to be? If you're very comfortable, and the church is very comfortable with these guys coming in and they're sort of effectively using your premises, and it's great to see children and people on the premises, and that's the be all and end of it, then I'm not going to say it's fine, but it's a way of approaching it. But actually, for any church, I think, if they've got children and young people in their building, in their mix, then there has to be another step forward in relation to that. How do you how do you link what's happening in the church and in the uniform group a bit more? Now that may be a small step, because I think the danger is, and I have this in some of the conversations I have, is that some churches often think that the measure of whether there's engagement with the uniform group is, do we see the officers and children on a Sunday morning? Now that may be a measure, but it might not be the best measure of what the success is. So I think it's like that maybe the ultimate ambition. It might be, yeah, we really want to see our Sunday services packed with children and young people that come through the uniformed organisation. It might be a really good ambition to have, but it's probably not going to happen on day one, week one, year one of trying to move this relationship forward. So it's small steps, I think. Really, it's thinking about, where are we now? What would a step to engagement be? And that might be, let's do something together. Let's yeah. I mentioned about the celebration services, but also, you could, a quiz evening, whatever it might be, a community project. Just trying to build those bridges and those stepping stones towards getting the church and the uniformed organizations a bit closer together. So my key point would be, establish where you are, think about where you want to be, and then think about the tiny stepping stones that will get you there, rather than being too ambitious and overnight thinking, oh yeah, we can fix this, or we can turn this round, or and also I think it's just recognizing, if you start to recognize as a partnership, then it maybe changes the perception of how you approach things. I think if you just think of it, that these are people renting our building, and yeah, it's great, but it's not got any sort of strategy behind it, then that becomes more difficult to do. So, but I recognise, with scouts and stuff like that, there might be a different way of approaching things. But I think it's, if you've got any organisation that is connected with children and young people, the church has a part in supporting the leaders, and it's two-way. I think it's like, the church going maybe to the group and saying, how can we support you? What would make your life easier? What would make it even better to be part of this organisation? And the church, church and the groups could go to the church and say, what could we do to help you, understand what we're doing, to recognise the value of what we're doing. So yeah, again, I don't know if that answered the question or not.
Yeah,
but
no, that's helpful, Peter. That is, thank you. Anyone else have any questions they want to ask Peter? Okay, I'll take that silence as a note.